I didn't scream. I didn't slam the door. I just stood there at the edge of the stage, holding my diploma in both hands, and I smiled. Smiled like someone had stapled it to my face. My father was already walking toward the parking lot before the photographer even finished. My mother lingered just long enough to say, loud enough for the couple beside us to hear, "Your sister got a full scholarship to Queen's. Did you know that? A full scholarship." I knew. Everyone in our family knew. It had been mentioned at every dinner table, every holiday gathering, every phone call for the past 3 years. My sister. The brilliant one. The chosen one. The daughter they actually wanted to talk about. Had gotten into Queen's University on a full academic scholarship. Pre-law, top of her class. I had gotten into Lakehead. Not Queen's. Not Western. Not even McMaster, which my father had floated as a minimum acceptable outcome when I was in grade 11. Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario. A good school. A real school. But to my parents, it was proof of something they had already decided about me when I was 8 years old. And my sister won her first piano recital, and I came home with a second-place ribbon from the regional science fair. Second place. My father looked at the ribbon, set it on the counter, and threw it in the recycling bin 2 days later without saying a word. I was 8. I still remember the sound of the plastic hitting the bin. I spent 4 years at Lakehead studying accounting and finance. I took out a student loan, $24,000 over 4 years, and I paid it back myself. Every cent. I tracked my spending in a spreadsheet on my laptop: rent, groceries, textbooks, transit passes, the occasional $4.75 coffee that I allowed myself on Friday afternoons as a reward for making it through the week. I had a part-time job at a Canadian Tire warehouse on weekends. I had another job doing bookkeeping for a small landscaping company during tax season. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving in second year because I couldn't afford the bus fare and I wasn't going to ask for it. My mother called twice. My father didn't call at all. My sister called once, 3 weeks into my first semester, to tell me that her constitutional law professor had singled out her essay in front of the entire class. She wasn't bragging. That's the thing I want to make clear. She genuinely wasn't. She just had no other way to talk to me. We'd grown up in the same house for 18 years. And we had never really learned how to speak to each other as equals, because we were never treated as equals. She was the ceiling. I was the floor. I graduated in spring. My parents didn't come. My mother said she had a prior commitment. I never found out what it was. My father said Thunder Bay was too far to drive, and he wasn't flying to Thunder Bay. My sister sent me a card with a $50 Tim Hortons gift card tucked inside, and a handwritten note that said, "I'm proud of you, even if they won't say it." I still have that card. It's in a shoebox under my bed in the apartment I live in now, in Winnipeg. I moved to Winnipeg 6 weeks after graduation. I had a job offer from a mid-sized accounting firm. $58,000 to start, benefits after 3 months, opportunity to work toward my CPA designation. I took it without hesitating. I didn't tell my parents I was moving until 4 days before I left, and even then I only texted. My mother replied with a single question mark. My father didn't reply at all. I built my life in pieces. The way you do when there's no one handing you a blueprint. I found an apartment on Osborne Street, a 1-bedroom, $1,340 a month, which was a stretch on my salary but worth it because it was mine and mine alone. I furnished it slowly. A bed frame from Facebook Marketplace, a kitchen table from the Salvation Army on Portage Avenue, a second-hand couch that I spent 3 Saturdays reupholstering with fabric I bought on sale from Fabricland. It wasn't perfect. It was mine. I started putting away $400 a month into a TFSA the first month I had a paycheck. I set up automatic transfers so I wouldn't talk myself out of it. I read personal finance forums at night the way other people watch Netflix. I opened an FHSA account when the federal government launched the program because I had done the math and I knew that I wanted to own something before I was 35. Something that couldn't be taken from me and put in the recycling bin. My parents and I exchanged maybe 6 texts a year. Happy birthday messages that felt like form letters. A Merry Christmas from my mother that arrived on December 27th, both years running. Nothing of substance, nothing real. I was fine with that. I want to be honest about this part. I was fine with it. I had grieved the parents I wanted when I was 19, sitting alone in my dorm room in Thunder Bay in November, eating a bowl of instant ramen and listening to the wind off Lake Superior rattling my window. I had cried about it then, thoroughly and completely. And then I had made a decision. I was going to build a life that didn't require their approval. I was going to become someone who didn't need anything from them. I was 28 when the first message came. It was from my mother, not a text, an actual voicemail, which I hadn't received from her in years. Her voice sounded strange, smaller than I remembered. She said she hoped I was doing well, that she thought about me often, that she wanted to let me know that things had been difficult lately. She didn't explain what difficult meant. She asked me to call her back when I had a chance. I listened to the voicemail 3 times. Then I set my phone face down on my kitchen table and went for a 45-minute walk along the river. I called her back 2 days later. She picked up on the second ring. It came out in stages. The way bad news always does when the person delivering it isn't sure how much to say. My father had a gambling problem. That was the first stage. He had been going to the casino in Niagara Falls. They had moved to the Niagara region a few years earlier, something I had known only vaguely. And the losses had been significant. Over $90,000 in 18 months. They had taken out a line of credit against the house. The line of credit was now mostly drawn. They were behind on payments. We didn't know who else to call, my mother said. I want to tell you that I felt compassion in that moment. I want to tell you that I immediately moved past the sting of that sentence. We didn't know who else to call. As if I were a last resort, as if I were the Thunder Bay option, and found something generous inside myself. I didn't. Not immediately. What I felt, if I'm being completely honest, was a very cold and very specific clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from years of keeping your own books, of knowing down to the dollar what you have and what you owe. I thought, they need money. They're coming to me because they need money. This is the first real conversation my mother has initiated with me in 4 years, and it is about money. I asked questions, specific ones. What was the total outstanding on the line of credit? What were the monthly minimums? Had they spoken to a credit counselor? Had they contacted a licensed insolvency trustee? Was there equity remaining in the property? My mother said she didn't know the exact numbers. She said my father wasn't comfortable discussing the details. She said they just needed some help to get through the next little while. I asked how much. She said $15,000. I said I needed to think about it. I called my sister that night. She picked up after several rings, sounding distracted. She was in the middle of prepping a case file. She said she had a hearing the following week. She had finished law school at Queen's, articled at a firm in Ottawa, and was now working as an associate at a mid-size firm in Toronto, primarily in civil litigation. I told her about the phone call. I told her what our mother had said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. How much? She asked. I told her. Another silence. They called you, she said. Not a question. Yes. They didn't call me first. I didn't know what to say to that. I let it sit between us. I'll look into it, she said finally. Don't do anything yet. I wasn't planning to. I mean it. Don't send anything, not yet. I hadn't planned to. But there was something in her voice. A particular tightness, the sound of someone who knows more than they're saying. that made me feel like the ground was slightly less stable than I had assumed. The next 10 days were quiet. I went to work. I billed my hours. I made my coffee at home in the mornings, and I tracked my spending, and I went to the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I did not call my mother back. Then my sister called me. She didn't open with small talk. She said, "I need to tell you something and I need you to hear all of it before you react." I sat down on my reupholstered couch and I said, "Okay." She had gone to see our parents in person. She hadn't told me she was going. She had driven from Toronto to Niagara on a Saturday alone, and she had sat down with them at the kitchen table and she had asked them to show her the documents, the bank statements, the line of credit paperwork, the casino receipts. "They didn't want to show me," she said. "Dad said it was private. Mom said I was making a stressful situation worse. But you saw them anyway." "I'm a litigator," she said. "I told them I wasn't leaving until I saw the numbers, so they showed me. The losses were real. The line of credit was real. The $90,000 figure was, if anything, conservative. The actual total was closer to $112,000 when she factored in a separate personal loan our father had taken out in his name only, which our mother claimed not to have known about. But that wasn't what she had called to tell me. While she was there, she had gone through the paperwork my father left on the dining room table. He had stepped outside to take a phone call, and my mother had gone to make tea. And my sister, who had spent the last 6 years being paid to read documents that other people didn't want read, had looked at everything on that table. There was a bank statement. Not from the line of credit account. From a separate account, a savings account, one she hadn't seen before. The account had a balance of $34,000. She had photographed it with her phone before my father came back inside. "I don't understand," I said. "The account is in Dad's name only," she said. "It looks like it's been open for about 3 years. The deposits don't match anything from his employment. He's been retired since before this account was opened. Small amounts, irregular, but they've been adding up. Where is it coming from?" "I don't know yet. Are you saying?" "I'm saying they told you they had nothing." "I'm saying that isn't true. I'm saying I don't know the full picture yet, but I know enough to tell you that you should not send $15,000 to people who have a $34,000 account they didn't mention." I held the phone against my ear, and I looked at the kitchen table I had bought from the Salvation Army, and the lamp I had found at Value Village, and the IKEA curtains I had put up myself with a borrowed drill. And I thought about being 8 years old and watching my father pick up my ribbon and put it on the counter and say nothing. "Okay," I said. "Don't contact them yet," she said. "Let me do a little more digging." She called me again 9 days later. By then, she had gone back through our parents' financial picture more carefully, not as a daughter, but as someone who understood how money moves and how people hide it. She had also, quietly, spoken to a family law colleague about what recourse might exist if funds had been deliberately concealed. The hidden account had been funded, as best she could piece together, through small systematic transfers from our parents' joint checking account over a period of approximately 3 years. Our father had been moving money, not a lot at a time, but consistently, into an account that only he controlled. Even as the losses at the casino mounted and the line of credit swelled and my mother apparently believed they were on the edge of financial ruin, he was protecting it, my sister said. From the creditors. From Mom, maybe. From everyone. "And they called me for $15,000. Yes. I thought about that for a long time without saying anything. "What do you want to do?" she asked. This is the part I want to be careful about, because I don't want to sound like someone who set out to cause harm. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I didn't want my father arrested or my mother humiliated. What I wanted. The thing I had wanted since I was 8 years old, standing in the kitchen watching my ribbon go into the bin, was simply to be seen clearly. To have the truth of our situation acknowledged by the people who had spent 20 years arranging reality to suit their preferences. So I wrote a letter, not an email. A letter, printed on paper, mailed from the post office on Portage Avenue with the tracking number. I addressed it to both of them. I wrote that I had received my mother's voicemail, and I had considered their request carefully. I wrote that before making any financial decision, I had done what any reasonable person would do. I had reviewed the available information. I noted, without accusation, that I was aware of the existence of the savings account. I noted that the balance in that account was sufficient to address the most urgent of their immediate obligations. I suggested they consult a licensed insolvency trustee and a financial counselor before making any further decisions. I said that I wished them well. I said I would not be sending the $15,000. I did not say I loved them. I did not say I didn't. I signed it with my full name, the one on my CPA designation, the one I had built entirely on my own without a single dollar of their help. My mother called 4 times over the next 2 weeks. I let all 4 go to voicemail. In the 3rd message, she sounded angry. In the 4th, she cried. Neither message mentioned the savings account. Neither message acknowledged that anything my letter contained was true. My father never called. My sister called, a few weeks after that, on a Sunday evening. She was tired. I could hear it in her voice. The particular exhaustion of someone managing too many things at once. She said our parents had retained a credit counselor. She said the hidden savings account had, apparently, become a significant point of tension in the marriage. She said she didn't know all the details and wasn't sure she wanted to. "Are you okay?" I asked her. She took a moment before she answered. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, "about what it was like for you, growing up." I didn't say anything. I think I understood, intellectually. But I don't think I really understood. The way they talked about you. The way they talked about you. The way they talked about you. The way they talked about me, when you weren't in the room. She paused. It wasn't kindness, what they did to me. I see that now. They used me as a way to diminish you. I wasn't a person to them either. I was a measuring stick. I had thought about that for years. I had turned it over in my mind in dorm rooms and cheap apartments, and the front seat of my second-hand Civic, driving alone through the Canadian Shield. It was something I had arrived at on my own, slowly. The way you arrive at hard truths. Not all at once, but in pieces, until one day you realize you've been holding it for a while. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. You're saying it now." We talked for almost 2 hours that night. About our childhoods, about the things we remembered differently and the things we remembered exactly the same, about the piano recitals she had never actually wanted to do, about the science fair ribbon. She didn't know about the ribbon. She had been at a lesson when it happened. And when I told her, she went quiet for a long moment. "He threw it away," she said. "Second day, after I brought it home." God, yeah. She came to visit me in Winnipeg in August. She slept on an air mattress in my living room, and we went to the Forks and walked along the river and ate at a Ukrainian restaurant on McPhillips Street and talked until midnight, 2 nights in a row. She brought a bottle of Ontario wine, and I made a charcuterie board, badly, and we laughed about it. On the last morning before she drove to the airport, she sat at my kitchen table. The one from the Salvation Army. The one I had sanded and repainted myself. And she looked around my apartment and she said, "You built something real here." I looked at the curtains I had put up with a borrowed drill, and the lamp from Value Village, and the couch I had reupholstered over 3 Saturdays, and the spreadsheet open on my laptop tracking the contributions I had made toward my FHSA that year. "Yeah," I said. "I did. My parents are still in the Niagara region as far as I know. I don't know the current state of their finances. I don't know if my father has gone back to the casino. I don't know if my mother has forgiven him for the hidden account, or if there is anything left there to forgive. I know that I have $41,200 saved toward a down payment. I know that if I stay on my current trajectory, I will be able to buy something modest in Winnipeg within the next 2 years. A condo, probably, or a small house in a neighborhood I've already started researching. I know that no one helped me get here. I know that no one helped me get here. And I know that somewhere in my apartment, in a shoebox under my bed, there is a card my sister sent me a long time ago that says, "I'm proud of you," even if they won't say it. I used to read it when things were hard. I don't need to anymore. But I kept it anyway. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what my father did when I was 8. The ribbon, the recycling bin, the silence that followed. For a long time, I thought the silence was the worst part. That no explanation was somehow more damaging than a cruel one would have been, but I don't think that anymore. What I think now is that the silence told me exactly what I needed to know. It told me that in that house, my accomplishments would always be measured against someone else's, and that measurement would always come up short. It told me in the clearest possible language that I was going to have to build something they couldn't touch. So I did. Not out of anger. Or not only out of anger. Out of a very quiet, very determined understanding that the only proof that mattered was the proof I could hold in my own hands. The spreadsheet. The TFSA balance. The CPA designation with my name on it. The apartment I furnished piece by piece from Salvation Army stores and Facebook Marketplace. These weren't symbols of defiance. They were just mine. Entirely, completely mine. There's something people don't always say about growing up the way I did. The scapegoat learns to keep records. Not out of pettiness, but out of necessity. When no one is going to advocate for you, you learn to document everything. You learn what things actually cost. You learn to read the fine print. You learn that feelings are real, but numbers are verifiable, and that the truth, eventually, always shows up in the numbers. That's what my sister found. Not a dramatic confession. Not a moment of reckoning anyone planned. Just a bank statement sitting on a dining room table while my father stepped outside and my mother went to make tea. $34,000 in an account they had never mentioned. The numbers told the truth. My parents had decided not to. I think about my sister a lot these days. About who she was inside that house and who she has become outside of it. She was handed a role she didn't ask for. The same way I was handed mine. Golden child, measuring stick, the standard I could never meet. She carried that for years without fully understanding what it was doing to both of us. When she finally saw it clearly, she didn't hesitate. She drove from Toronto to Niagara on a Saturday alone, and she sat down at that kitchen table and she asked to see the documents. That took a kind of courage that has nothing to do with being the favorite child and everything to do with the person she chose to become on her own terms. The cause and the consequence in this story are not hard to trace. My parents planted a hierarchy and expected both of us to maintain it indefinitely. One of us inflated, one of us diminished, neither of us seen as a full person. What they got instead was two women who eventually found their way to each other across the distance that hierarchy had created, and who chose honesty over loyalty to a fiction. I don't know what my parents will do next. I don't spend much time wondering. What I know is this. The work I did was real. The savings are real. The apartment is real. The friendship my sister and I are slowly, carefully building. That is real too. None of it came from them. All of it came from choosing, over and over again, to do the honest thing even when it was easier not to. That's the only philosophy I have. Do the honest thing. Keep your records. Build what is yours. And when someone you love finally shows up on the right side of the truth, let them in.